Yo, what's up, everyone? This is Josh Krafchick, Millennial Slacker, and I'm here with my boy Dale Todd. And we actually met on an airplane when we were flying to, what was it, California, Dale?
Yeah.
Yeah, so we were going to California, and I heard him say the word, and you don't hear this word too often out in society, actuarial science. I had to turn around and be like, yo, like, I actually did that in school too. We started chatting, and I've, I don't know, Dale and I just kind of connected. He's a very spiritual guy. You don't meet a lot of people that even know what actuarial science is, let alone two people on the same plane to California that both majored in it. So it was definitely a positive meeting of the minds, per se. So Dale is basically researching fear and is looking to make an impact to share with people, why do we have fear? What is fear? And how can we overcome fear? So Dale and I are just going to chat today about fear and how to accept it, live in the moment, and to overcome it and use it to our advantage. Does that sound about right, Dale?
Yeah. I think fear is a very profound topic, but it's also a very relevant topic. It's something that we almost have some sort of relationship with. I think in many regards, people view fear more so in a negative way, negative dynamic, where in fact, there's a lot of functionality parts of fear that we all must learn and understand, because, what we really care about is being able to navigate the world. And fear is just one of the emotions that we have that helps us kind of understand what's in front of us, right?
Yeah. So why fear? Out of like all the things that you can learn about, why did you choose fear?
Fear, in addition to many things that I write and I think on, fear is a profound one for me, simply because when I was younger, grew up in a household with an abusive stepfather, and I got to witness firsthand how fear can be polarizing, and it had a profound effect on my development in many ways. For one is intellectual development. I had a lot of problems in school growing up. I think at some points I felt, I remember in second grade I got like 8 needs improvements, right? And
Yeah, we've all got in trouble in school.
yeah. Since then, I've gone to college and I've maintained A GPAs, but I was really struggling in growing up. And one of the reasons why that is because fear is very polarizing, and it will affect people on multiple dimensions: physically, one, and mentally and spiritually. And so it's one of the biggest blocks that we can have in our lives. And so there's a lot of benefits of, I don't like to use the word overcoming fear, but more so sitting with our fears, because it's a tool that we use to function. It's a tool that we use to help navigate our self in this world. My feet right now, they're size 14 and a half. And I only made it to 6 foot. So I think I was actually supposed to be.
That's like, you're supposed to be like 6'8".
Somewhere I'm supposed to be around like 6'5", right? So even developmental in terms of physicality, yeah, fear also had an effect on my development. And some people, they have they develop ulcers in their stomachs. Some people, they have high levels of stress, and it goes to depression, it goes to anxiety. This is all the root cause of, how fear is impacting us. So, I made a point to really understand fear. And when I was younger, I decided I was going to start challenging fears, simply because I didn't like that it was controlling me. And I recognized that at a very young age. I remember as a 12-year-old, I was at one of these Six Flags, and I would see girls go by, and at the time, like they would smile at me, and I was at the time I like to do my hair really nice, and I could have been one of the Backstreet Boys. I don't know, but
Oh man, dude, I just like it's a fear of rejection. It's
yeah,
like you have people come up to you, they talk to you, and it breaks down that fear. But it's like who makes the first move per se? Like, do I make the first move? Do they make the first move? I don't know. Like, and then it's just kind of like going back to when we met. I could have just sat there and said nothing, but I was like, let me just say something.
yeah,
Because I don't know, I got nothing to lose. I may not see you again, but here we are.
right, yeah. The amount of opportunities that fear will have you miss out on, it would prevent you from taking the steps to better your life. It would take you away from developing relationships with people. Um, Fear is contracting. That's really what it comes down to. And the way I like to think of fear, it's a boundary that we put in place that says, you shall not pass. And potentially the boundary propels you away from that, so you don't go past that boundary. And many times on the other side of that boundary, on the other side of that fear, is everything that we're looking for, everything that we want. So the relationship that we have with fear it's worthy of challenging. It's worthy of confronting. It's worthy of understanding.
Yeah, yeah. How,
Mhm.
does that come down to like self-sabotage, not wanting to overcome our fears? Like, for example, maybe fear of being too successful and our friends won't like us anymore. Like as you progress through life, like you go to high school, you have a bunch of friends, then 5 years later, you're only talking to one or two. You go to college, you have a bunch of friends, you only talk to one to two. Is that sort of what you mean by that?
Sure. Fear is self-limiting. It's what it comes down to. I like to think of it as fear is contracting. That's the best way the best way of understanding the nature of fear is to think of it as a contracting force. So what you mentioned right there was, okay, so if I change the mold of what someone sees me as, well, then I've violated I have a fear of violating their understanding of me, their construct of me. And people don't like when you change because they like to understand what's in front of them and what people are and what they're about and so forth. They have a strong need for certainty, just like we all do. We have a need for certainty. Um, so the other thing that I think is worthy of proposing is to think of fear in the context of it's a construct of the unknown. So what I mentioned there was, well, you became something unknown to that person because I had a construct that represented you. And then all of a sudden, you decided to move on and beyond that construct of what I had in place for you. And that's how I identify you. And that's just you being a person. This same uh, like the same idea, it goes beyond in terms of everything that we have in front of us. What we care about is that the external world reflects what our internal world has in store. Whatever we've depicted in our internal worlds, if it reflects the external world, ultimately what we've gained from this is certainty. And if we had complete certainty, well, fear couldn't exist with complete certainty. So pretend the
Isn't
best
that
ways to
kind of like what
understand it.
life is, though, is uncertainty? But that would be like maybe a comparison that people that they were working these corporate jobs. They knew they're going to get paid every 2 weeks. Then a coronavirus comes, and those people no longer have jobs. So they had those jobs because they thought they had security. But when
Yeah,
shit hits the fan, they had no security.
yeah, yeah. That in itself is fear inducing because it creates unknown. So potentially you can actually categorize fear in maybe two ways. And I would probably relate it, I'll somehow make this concept move into just really one way overall. But so there's fears that relate to danger. And, if you're getting attacked by a lion, you need to have a healthy amount of fear to run from the lion. If there's a falling tree that's about to hit you, you have to have a fear to say, hey, get out of the way. But this is something that we weren't born with. If you put a snake around a baby and have it, it's going to just sit there and just look at it and like, whatever, you know? But like the snake becomes a learned behavior later on when they find out that, whoa, this thing can, bite you. And they've seen the way that these snakes can devour animals. And once they start relating the meanings of the snake and how that snake kind of could be a threat to them, well, that's when fear is developed. And I ultimately,
So it's like a skill. You can learn fear, and you could, like, I'm terrified of heights. If I really wanted to, I could break that fear. Is that what
yeah,
you're saying?
yeah. I mean, if you really think about how did a fear develop, and you actually you'll find that it all relates back to a thought. So I don't believe we can understand fear without first understanding our thoughts. And the best way that I've come to understand what thoughts are everything that comes into our minds first comes in through our senses. Everything we know in our internal world was a result of data coming in through our eyes. There's an oscillating nerves that are just flickering, and they're just flickering patterns, and they're kind of telling us what's in front of us. And then we hear big booms and what have you through our ears, and we know that something's going on, some sort of pattern that's going on through our ears. So this is the information that we're getting from the external world. And in order for us to understand it, we have to simplify it into a thought. Because ultimately, if you look at what's in front of you, just look out in nature, there's no way you can capture the vastness of that in a thought. You have to somehow put it into a context, into a construct that's able to grasp what it is that's in front of you. So that's how a thought's formed. Now, the next component is fear. So fear attaches to the thought. So you have the object, which could be like the snake, right? Well, then all of a sudden you have a fear that gets attached to it and says, oh, snake, fear, watch out for, be wary of, So that's how it roots in our minds. That's really what we're dealing with.
So is there like a difference between thoughts and beliefs, or do they lead to each other? Or is that something you can elaborate on?
Sure. I would say that beliefs are a sequence of thoughts that equate to something. So a thought could be something so simplistic as a color. And then, we start pairing these thoughts together. And then maybe we have something that's blue, and then we have something that's a pen. Well, it's about 6 years old. You got to usually around 6 years old to where understand that they go together. Blue pen. So they'll understand the concept of blue if you're under this age of 6, or they'll understand the concept of a pen. But those two things don't merge together until later on in life. And as we develop, that's ultimately what we're doing, is we're making assumptions, we're making belief systems, where ultimately what we're trying to do is we're trying to tell us what the hell is going on in the external world. And let me pose this idea to you. Could fear exist if you knew everything that was going to happen?
No.
And I think that's fair. I think I'm with you on this.
It's kind of like the Oracle in the Matrix.
Right.
Like, she's the little old lady. She's very happy, even though all these bad things are going on, because she knows exactly what's going to happen.
Yeah. Think if you had a crystal ball, right? And if you had a crystal ball that can tell you, you can ask anything to it, and it would tell you what was going to happen next. What was going to, like if you lost your job, well, am I going to get a job soon? Yeah, sure. In 3 weeks. Oh, okay. Well, then I don't have that fear anymore. Because
Like, can you manifest those thoughts in your mind to make that come true?
Uh, I think so. What we're talking about is the unknown. The overall context of the crystal ball, it's making the unknown known.
How do
Once,
we make the unknown known? Is there any way?
well, what we have to realize is once we do that, well, what that is, it's increasing our certainty. So if we're talking about fear, and if we're trying to eliminate our fears, the only way that we can do it is by increasing our certainty. Because fear is a construct of the unknown. That's what it represents. That's ultimately, if we're worried about something, it's something that's in the future. If we're anxious about something, it's something in the future. And that's an unknown in the future. That's an unknown that we're worrying about. And if you have complete certainty.
Yeah, like what's the quote? If you're living in the past, you're depressed. If you're living in the future, you're anxious. And that's why it's important to remain present.
Yeah. Present, you're at peace. And
like right now, I have no idea 6 months from now if I am going to be completely out of money or I'm going to make enough money to live. But I have the hope that everything that I'm doing on a daily basis is going to lead me to the desired outcome that I want. So I'm hopeful that's going to happen. I'm not fearful, like sitting in my bed all day, like, oh no, I'm going to run out of money. Like I'm putting in the time, the energy, like priming the pump per se to get the outcome that I want.
Yeah. Well, if you did live in the future, well, what it does is it polarizes you, just like I was when I was a child. So if you're constantly thinking about the things that could potentially harm you, well, then you're less present. And when you're less present, then you're less useful. You're less able to focus. You're less able to create. It's almost as if you're chipping away at your consciousness, little by little. And if we've all met people that are just kind of halfway there, they're maybe you're meeting half of them and their mind's in some other place. They're worried about something.
Not to cut you off there, but have you ever asked any question? Hey, how you doing? Hey, what's up? It's like people are programmed to not listen. It's like, hey, how you doing? Hey, what's up, man? It's like, good.
Yeah.
How are you? Good. It's like you didn't even respond to my question. You just went to what your brain is familiar with because it's a safe answer. But by doing that, you're not even listening or visualizing what's actually happening. You're living in this world that you've created.
Yeah, that's the world of thoughts. That's what that is. And I've been guilty of this. I've been guilty of living in the world of thoughts.
Yeah, I believe everyone has.
Yeah, well, in some respects, we need those thoughts to survive. We need those. These are attachments that kind of let us know what's important to us. And those attachments are what we need to help us survive. They tell us, how do we get food, water, and shelter? In a perfect world, for me, I would love to be always in the present. I think, and I'm saying that very loosely because I don't know that for sure, but I like to be more in the present than I do in thinking about future and so forth. I feel like in the present is like a beautiful place for people to be aware of. But a lot of people that I come across, they're just living in their thoughts.
Like right now, like you and I, we had a choice. It's Sunday afternoon. Are you back on the East Coast? I know you bounce between West Coast, East Coast.
Yeah, I'm in Georgia.
Yeah, so I mean, we had a choice to, talk to each other, to educate people about fear, how to overcome it, what is fear, that's the whole idea of our conversation. Or I could have gone and went to the beach all day and drank beer.
Yeah. Oh,
However,
man.
I made the conscious decision to stay in and to forego that so that we can have this discussion.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So it's like the fear of what am I missing? However, I don't fear that because I know that even if only one person views this discussion and they're able to benefit it, it was worth having this discussion, even if only one person sees it that gets any value of it.
Yeah. Yeah. And like what you're kind of hitting on is that if you're standing for helping someone else, that's what you stand for, and that's what you care about, then that's how you conduct your life. That's the purpose you've implemented into your ego, into your being. For me, that's why I'm here too. That's where we have a meeting of the minds. More people help each other. I think that you're going to create a better world. And so we all have something at stake. We all have to do our part. Yeah.
So how do we overcome fear? Is it possible?
So yeah, if you really want to understand fear, you have to realize it's a construct of the unknown. And how do you overcome fear? Well, you have to make the unknown known. And you do this through increasing certainty. So
And when
everyone
you say
has
that, it just reminds me of the concept of heaven.
I think I really do. I really do. And really, by me, I think that's where it goes towards. If you can make the unknown known, I believe that it allows you to open yourself up more, and let more things in, more love in, be more present. And I think that moves you in the direction of a heavenly state. So for me, understanding fear in many regards has been the one thing that has helped me move towards a more loving state. I find that once I found that fear and is about, I can reduce it through increasing my certainty. Well, the less fears that I have, the more I'm willing to go out into the unknown. And the thing about the unknown is that's where all the knowledge exists. If you stay in what you know, well, you're just repeating the same patterns of thinking that you've already come across in the past. And there's not a lot of growth in that.
Yeah, didn't they say that just doing the same thing over and over is the definition of insanity or something like that?
Dude, man, if you're in purgatory, if you're in stagnation, anything's better than stagnation. Anything better than not progressing. Whether you got to go out and yell at the roof of your mouth, or there's an experiment they did with children where they took these kids and they put them in a room with an electric shocker, nothing else in there. Okay, so they just left the room and they're like, they just told them what it was, and if you hit this, it'll shock you, and they left. Well, the kids are like fiddling with their thumbs for a long time, and at some point they're bored. They're going out of their minds. And what they found was, I think it was like 80% of them over to the electric shock and shocked themselves. And many of them did it multiple times. We all have a fear of being shocked. Well, if you were in a state of stagnation, of stimulation deprivation, of anything's better than that, anything, and you will gladly open yourself up to overcome, taking on your fear, or getting shocked. So that's something interesting. Like, I don't know that we're capable of stagnation as humans. I think we would go literally insane, like you were saying.
Yeah, I mean, what I can think of right now is with the coronavirus, the amount of people applying for unemployment is record-setting numbers because people want that government check, because they want that guaranteed money per se. Or the other part that you can think about is like, I don't need the government's money. I'm going to go find another job. I can go find another job tomorrow. Having that confidence to eliminate that fear. But why do so many people just stick their hand out and want something because they feel like they're entitled to it? Is it fear, or am I off track here?
Well, I think what you're kind of alluding to, at least in the beginning part, is that they're willing to go into the unknown and find another job. So some of those people are going to. There's three responses of fear. There's fight, flight, or freeze, right? So the fighters are like, hey, I need to go find another job. I got to figure out what I can do to make money and so forth. And the freezers are the people that are going to, marinate on their couches and like wait for money to pop in their laps. And, that's another response to that fear. And the flighters are, well, I don't know. And I think it's and this is a physical, we're talking about people reacting physically towards the coronavirus, but
Yeah.
these thoughts start mentally. There's some variation of fight, flight, or freeze within very mundane fears that we have. It's just the way that we operate. Yeah. I feel like, one thing about this is a fearful time, really, if you think about it.
Yeah, I mean, it's unknown.
It's a lot of unknowns, right? Construct of the unknown, fears. One thing what worries me about these unknown times, about these times that have more intense fears, or just more fear in general, is what fear does is it causes us to concentrate on ourselves more and makes it to where we are less concerned with others, less willing to concentrate on others. And this also equates to lowering our empathy for others.
Is this considered like being selfish and ego, like of oneself, or?
You, and just like everyone else, were subject to the same mannerisms. If you're in a fearful state, if you're in a suffering state, that's just the human nature. Like we want to unsuffer. We don't want to suffer. So we are going to be more self-consumed. And unfortunately, that creates a world where you're more willing to serve yourself at someone else's expense.
Oh, that's not good.
Yeah. And so when you go into higher countries that have higher states of suffering, what you'll find is that people are more willing to do that. And it creates a very distrusting environment. And less people are willing to collaborate, and they're less willing to come together. We're less united. And in many respects, that makes us more vulnerable to be controlled. And I find that to be an issue.
Yeah. I mean, that's the whole reason why I want this, the Millennial Slackers Guide to grow, is to be a community. Like I met you on a plane and you're more in touch with these sort of subjects than I am. But if I never met you and we weren't sitting here right now at this present moment, we wouldn't be having this discussion about fear and how people can overcome it and what is fear, and sharing these ideas that maybe you just write them and keep them to yourself and you never share them.
That's true, man. That's true. What are we doing here? We're creating more certainty, right? More people are aware of this. They understand how it's affecting them. Well, now they can better orientate themselves to deal with it. And that's probably one of the reasons why I'm so passionate about understanding how fear affects us, simply because if you knew how you were being affected, well, the next question you can ask is, well, do I like being affected this way? And that's what you have to identify a problem before you can change it. So yeah, anything, I'm glad that you asked me to come on here, Josh, because, having content and just developing yourself, this is the first time I've really talked about it, and so
yeah, it's scary. Like, we're on this video, we're going to share it. 5 people can see it. Me and you can just see it, or maybe 5 million people see it. We don't know. But the idea isn't to go viral. The idea is to share these ideas with other people that are maybe going through a tough time. Because if we can, if you see other people do something, that gives you the hope to do it. Kind of like the 4-minute mile with what's his name? Roger Bannister. Is that his name?
I know what you're talking about. Yep.
Yeah. They said it was impossible. No one could do the 4-minute mile. And then he did it. And then everyone started breaking the 4-minute mile, because in people's minds, they said it was impossible. But it took one person to say it is possible to break it. And then people are like, well, if he can do it, I can do it. And if we can
Yeah.
start that chain of reaction, that'll give people less fear, because they're like, oh, Josh did this, I can do that. Or Dale did this, I could definitely do that. And
Yeah.
that's like the thing with sports that I feel gives kids false sense of hope. Like, no matter how hard I work, how many hours I put in, how good I get, I was never going to play basketball professionally.
Absolutely. One of the things what you were just talking about is like that boundary, that 4-minute boundary, that in many ways was this mindset that people had that this was something that was impossible. And that, uh, like I said, fear is of the unknown. So fear is a boundary that says you can't do this or you cannot pass. It takes you the willingness to challenge those boundaries. And that's what they are. They're the fears. Challenge those fears, challenge those boundaries to break through them. And the more that we do that, and this is where fear really comes in terms of being a benefit for everyone. As we continue to confront the boundaries of what's possible by going out into the unknown, by trying new things that we normally wouldn't have, well, we can potentially change the world. We can make discoveries that can help everyone else around us. And what's going to allow us to have the willingness to go into the unknown, break through those boundaries, is actually by increasing our certainty. And the reason why I say that is because we all have a certain threshold of the amount of unknown, the amount of courage that we have, that we're willing to go into the unknown, to confront ideas that are seemingly crazy, that are potentially confusing. And we need to have a certain amount of we need to have certainty, a level of certainty that would give us the ability to use that courage to go into the unknown. And if you're consumed with all of your fears that are happening around you, that is to say that you're chipping away at your mindset to think on this fear, slowly but surely you start becoming that person we were talking about, where they're only halfway there and all the rest of them are out in space. They're in time traveling, So it's important to ask the question, what's worth maintaining the fear? Because it's at the expense of you being more present. It's at the expense of us being more effective in what we're doing. And if it's worth maintaining the fear structures that you have, because they could really harm you. And we have to have a healthy amount of fear for things that can harm us. But to what extent is it worth maintaining that fear at the expense of you being present, to where you can actually be the person that goes into the unknown and breaks the barriers and breaks the boundaries and shows people what's possible. And that's the way we change the world.
Do you think, like, talk about money a little bit? Money, I feel like people are always fearful of money. Do you feel like people being fearful of losing money causes them to remain in a negative or a poor mindset? And I don't mean like poor as like poverty. I mean like a poor mindset, like a poor habits. Is that what you're talking about?
Well, if we relate this to money, I mean, well, what do we care about? We care about certainty. Well, if you have money, there's a lot of certainty that you get with having money, right? So I'm worried about not being able to eat, for instance. Well, I have money. Well, I don't have that fear, like I'm worried about where I can live at. Well, I got money. I don't have that fear. So if you can somehow fill in those fears with, having some financial stability, that allows you to have more certainty, and you'll be more effective about anything you do if money isn't the thing that you're always having to think on. A lot of times that sacrifice is something that you do when you're younger. I can tell when I was in working corporate, there's the big shots that walk around the corporate office and they have this confidence about themselves and they have this way that they carry themselves. And then there's the bottom, I don't call them bottom feeders, but we'll just say the people on the lower end of the totem pole. And that's like myself. Well, I'm, making a paycheck and I don't have a lot of certainty. And, I have more of a fear-ridden mindset to some extent because, I want to be able to be the guy that has the confidence to come into the room and present the idea and stand for what I believe in and not have the thing on the back that worries about, am I doing the right thing for my job or are they going to judge me and do this? Because if I just had money, I would just be like, guys, this is what I think. Okay. And so I think this is what it is. What do you guys think? If I didn't have that security, well, I'm going to the office like, well, this because of this and this happens like that way. And I'm being, they can sense that fear in my voice and my methods and my mannerisms. And people are very perceptive. They pick up on these things. So, adding on to what you're saying about money, geez, man, save up, get a nest egg, have your house paid off or get some sort of certainty by getting your wealth managed, established to where when you retire, well, you can retire with dignity. You don't have to be reliant on other people. That in itself is a gift that really keeps on giving.
Yeah, for sure. So I feel like we've hit a lot of good things on the head here. All in all, what would you like people to take away from this, Dale? What's the message summed up in a couple minutes, just in case people are skipping around, not watching the whole thing?
Yeah.
You know how that goes. I mean, any YouTube video I watch, I skip around. I'm not going to watch the whole thing. It could be someone as good as Joe Rogan. I'm still not sitting there for 2 or 3 hours watching the whole thing.
Yeah, I think it's better that we do them shorter. So this is what I would leave everyone with. So if we had the external world, if we can depict the external world in our internal minds, if we can depict those things perfectly, well, you would have complete certainty. And if you have complete certainty, fear cannot exist in complete certainty. So the thing that we should all challenge ourselves with is overcoming fears by allowing ourselves to understand things to the most truthful way that we possibly can. Because when we have very true, accurate assumptions, well, we use these assumptions to tell us what's happening in front of us, to tell us what's happening on the external world. And as we slowly but surely create many truthful assumptions in our minds, then we will have a better map of what's going on in front of us. And with that knowledge, we will have more courage to go into the unknown and do more things that we normally wouldn't do. So the thing that I would want to leave everyone with is to maintain your honest, truthful, have a high, have a high value for being honest and being able to depict things in front of you as honestly as you possibly can, so then you can help yourself amass the more truthful assumptions that you'll use to help you navigate the world, so then you can orientate yourself for advantage. And then I'll just put one more thing on there. And the more that you can increase your certainty, just like what Josh does by helping people get their wealth together, the more that you can increase that certainty, the better that you're going to, the more you that you're going to be, because the more you can be present and not actually thinking about things that you're fearing.
Yeah. When you saying that whole thing, it just reminded me of the Bulls documentary that just recently came out on ESPN. And Michael Jordan said, I pulled some people to a place they didn't want to go, but look at the results. They won a bunch of championships. So by him being that asshole, pulling them when they didn't want to be pulled, he was able to, bring them into that fear zone. And by them fearing him, when they played together, they feared nothing.
Yeah. Break through those boundaries. I like that. That's great.
So, yeah, I think this was fantastic. I really value the time that we spent today talking about fear with my boy Dale here. I'm Josh Krafchick with the Millennial Slackers Guide, and we chatted about what is fear, how to overcome fear, why we fear, and discuss some principles on to change our mindset so that we can be less fearful.
Absolutely. Yeah, man. Great talking with you, Josh.
Yeah, absolutely.
A lot of people, man.
For sure.